Good to have you here today. I want to tell everybody that those of who know me know that I'm consider myself a patriot, and that there's a lot of things that we need to do to improve things in this country. So on my hunt, I ran across Lee, who is, like myself, he's a constitutional conservative. So Lee, good to have you here.
Good to be here,
Good to
Chick.
meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, let's start. I moved to Delaware back in 1970. I've lived my entire adult life here in Delaware. I've raised a family, 3 children. I now have 4 beautiful grandchildren. I graduated from Rowan University in New Jersey. Came here, first taught school in the Catholic Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware. When my family expanded to 3, the Catholic schools don't pay that well, so I pursued a career on the railroad. And my grandfather had worked on the railroad for 50 years, always loved trains, so I embarked on a career on the railroad. And it took me from a manual laborer. I started as a manual laborer with laying track, and then became a train dispatcher, a train conductor, locomotive engineer, taught others how to run locomotives, and ended my career in management. So I had a 35-year career on the railroad. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and while I was working on the railroad, I coached sports at Archmere, St. Mark's, St. Elizabeth's.
Wow.
Involved in my community,
Wow.
Civic Association president, church parish council president, everything everybody else does when, you're raising a family.
Yeah, it's one thing is I've had a lot of that myself, and I know one thing for sure that I've learned is that experience is hindsight, and it gives you a lot of knowledge and background into what you're doing. So why did you decide to run for Congress? By the way, before you do that, I should iterate that he is running for U.S. Congress, and I think he'll make some great improvements. So why did you decide to run, Lee?
Well, deciding to run, or it goes back to always wanting to be involved in the process. And when I was raising a family, I became Civic Association president. I led my church parish council. I've run for office before. I've run for the Delaware State Senate twice. Successful campaigns. We came up short, but it's the idea of being involved. And at this stage of my life, I'm a grandfather. My grandchildren are growing up here in Delaware. Our state's falling behind, and the facts prove that out. I mean, we have 0.0 economic growth for the last quarter of 2019, and Delaware is one state, one of 9 states in the whole country that is predicted to have negative economic growth for 2020. The nation is prospering, and Delaware is falling behind, quite frankly. And I want this state to be a good place to live for my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and going forward in the future. So our current Congresswoman is not, in my estimation, doing much of anything for the state of Delaware. She goes to Washington. She is fine with investigations. She voted to impeach the president. She's not getting the people's work done. I want to go to Washington. I want to solve problems. I think that's the job of a congressman.
I completely agree, that's one of the very things that brought me to you when I was searching for an alternative, because what I've noticed is that Miss Rochester is always voting with the party and never with the constituents of Delaware. And that always bothered me, that you're not trying to even do what your constituents want you to do. So
I'll go to Washington. Look, I'm running as a Republican. I'm going to represent all Delawareans.
Right. I picked that up on your website, and okay. I like that. Yeah. How about the immigration issue? How do you feel about that?
Well, the immigration issue, I think the president has addressed that the right way. We have to secure our borders, all borders, southern borders. I think illegal immigration is down since he took office. That's a good thing. With illegal immigration, crime comes, sex trafficking, illegal drugs come across the southern border, gangs, MS-13. These things put a burden on our society. The lawlessness is one thing. but the financial burden that the millions and millions of people here legally put on us, the taxpayers, is in the billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And President Trump's done a good job securing the border. I believe we have to secure our borders. And people that are here illegally, they have to obey the law, and they need to be brought to justice.
Yeah, immigration reform has got to be at the top of the heap, because that'll stop it completely. And the fact that the amount of money we're spending on the illegals being in this country is just borders on ridiculous compared to what a lot of our own folks are experiencing.
Look, I believe in immigration. Okay, people like your ancestors, my ancestors. People, you come here, 1 million people come into this country legally a year. Okay, we welcome immigrants. But we cannot have people coming here illegally, circumventing the system, and in many cases, breaking our laws. Our current Congresswoman has made it clear that she supports sanctuary cities. She wants to make our state a sanctuary state. Mm-hmm. She's basically saying that people do not have to follow the law, except you and me.
Right.
Okay, which is totally wrong. And the stress that this puts on our schools and the financial resources of our small state, illegal immigration, it's something that needs to be addressed, and we need to address it head on.
Yeah, absolutely. The sanctuary city and state thing's got to go away, and I think they really need to get into the E-Verify and the birthright thing and all that. So we could get into that subject all day, I guess. But how about the Second Amendment?
Well, the Second Amendment, in my estimation, needs no interpretation. The founders wrote the Constitution, okay? They didn't have in there except for this or because of this or maybe we should do this or... Look, the Second Amendment is self-explanatory. And lawful gun owners, the people that I meet every day, are good, solid citizens across the country. Okay, for my opponent or the other party, the Democratic Party, to target law-abiding citizens who happen to own guns as a problem for violence in our country is totally off base. We need to address the mental health issue in our country. We have no mental health hospitals really anymore to speak of across the country. We need to reinstitute hospitals where people can get mental health. People that are mentally not well need not to be walking around in society and have the ability to go out and cause a mass shooting. So the real problems are hard to solve when it concerns violence in our country. We have to address the problems that are causing that. It's not law-abiding citizens who happen to own guns.
Very true, and it's a point I'd like to make that he just brought up, is that we should be interpreting the Constitution as written, and not. And you'll notice that I've said it before many times. I've been a Democrat all my life, but what's happening now is the Democratic Party is constantly trying to pass legislation to water down the Constitution as written, and it starts taking rights away little by little, and chopping away at them. And you're right. Why take guns away from law-abiding citizens? And, I saw an analogy come across the other day where somebody said, well, using the analogy of taking guns away from people that can't protect themselves, you might as well take all the sober drivers off the road and just leave the drunks on the road.
Exactly.
So there's really no difference. And on top of that, you mentioned mental health, which is a big issue. And my good friend Joseph Piner from Sin Focus Productions is doing a documentary film right now. He's just finishing up about that. It's really good, and I can't wait for you guys to see that.
Yeah, love to see it.
The other things that a lot of people are concerned about is healthcare. Now, I've got some insight into that myself, and what's your thoughts on healthcare?
Well, Chick, I think we need an entire show if we're going to talk about healthcare and how to address that. Everything from the high price of prescription drugs to medical care in our hospitals. Here in Delaware, we have one of the highest costs per patient in the nation. I think it may be number one, that a patient in a hospital here pays the highest cost percentage-wise of any other state in the country. The healthcare issue is one that, look, right now we have 180 million people that have private insurance in this country. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with the healthcare coverage I have. I'm retired.
As am I.
I have Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
I have a supplemental plan.
As am I.
The people that are happy with their healthcare under the Democrat plan with Medicare for all, that they would have to give up their private insurance. I do not think that's the way to go. I think people that are happy with their health care, which is the majority of people in this country, they should be able to keep their health care. The Democrat plan would basically bankrupt the country. In terms of lowering drug costs, the president has addressed this. Congress has addressed it to some extent. We really need to take a comprehensive look at the cost of prescription drugs. People, seniors like myself, like you, are on a fixed income. It's something that needs to be addressed. But I believe, as a capitalist, I believe it should be market-driven. I think the marketplace can solve the cost of drugs as long as there's competition in terms of healthcare, being able to cross state lines and get different healthcare plans, getting drugs from Canada. We have to look at it. But government taking over healthcare, Obamacare is a prime example. It did not work.
Right.
It's too costly. It costs too much money. We have to find a better way.
How do you feel about the late-term abortion issue?
Well, Chick, I'm pro-life, and the late-term abortion issue, which has been brought up here in Virginia with the governor allowing children to be basically born and to let die. And my opponent has voted for these bills in the United States Congress that support late-term abortion. I just find it unconscionable that people actually believe this and will let a child that is born during an abortion procedure be let to die. It's a human life, and everything should be done to preserve that human life. I feel that we're going down a slippery slope here in our country in terms of, on the other end here in Delaware, there's a bill that assisted suicide bill. I just believe, and look, I'm a Christian, okay, but this is just a question to me of conscience, where people really we have to value human life, whether it's at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, and to support late-term abortion. Quite frankly, I don't know how anybody can support that, and I'll support to. I'll fight against it every step of the way. One of the reasons I'm running for Congress is to work for people that really don't have a voice, and people that are out there, and to support the weakest among us. And certainly, a child being born is defenseless, and I will fight with everything in my being to fight against what the opposing party wants to institute in this country.
Good, because I think that that's all the things we need to do is to go back to what our founders did to conceive this country, was in the Bill of Rights and our constitutional rights and all that, and we need to get back to that core of what they really wanted us to be. Between that and the free market system, is what made this country the country that it is. And now for the left to be trying to take us down this road of socialism and communism, because let's face it, socialism and communism are kissing cousins. Mm-hmm. And socialism has never worked anywhere in the world. So I don't, and I know you feel the same way about that. So, but The opioid epidemic, what's your thoughts?
Well, the opioid, and I classify the opioid epidemic along with the drug problem in our country. And, you know, this is hard. This is a subject. This is one of the main reasons why I am running for Congress. It's, again, a difficult topic. It's a difficult problem to solve. But this touches me personally. My daughter, Christy, the mother of my two beautiful grandkids, battled addiction her whole life, drug addiction, for over 20 years. And we had the peaks and the valleys, and the two of us went on a roller coaster ride trying to get her better. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. To my daughter's credit, she recovered, and it took every ounce of her being to put her life back together, and she did do that. We lost Christy 5 years ago. Ironically, it was after she battled addiction, was in recovery, to an ailment not connected with addiction. The hard part about that is that she overcame addiction, and it was not easy. Mm-hmm. Families in Delaware are all touched, whether the person, someone like who is addicted, or the family members. It tears families apart.
Absolutely
it puts a tremendous economic pressure on a family. But you have to spend money that you never thought you would have to spend to help the person that you love who is addicted. It puts a tremendous economic impact on our society.
Goes back to the mental health issue as well.
Mental health, yeah. And people are. It puts a big impact on our criminal justice system. So the opioid drug addiction problem, we lost over 400 people here in Delaware last year to overdoses, more than one a day. It's a problem we have to address, and the president has addressed it, or at least allocated the funds. But people that are in need of help need to have it immediately. And there has to be places where people can go, not for 30 days or 60 days, but maybe for a year or two, to get their lives put back and to overcome their addiction. It's a serious problem, and I want to address it when I go to Congress. I may not solve it in my lifetime. We may not solve it in my grandkids' lifetime, but it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yes, I agree. It's because it really does affect all families, though. Another thing that really gets to me when I start talking to people, and some of them are very educated people too, and you see it with a lot of celebrities and things like that, is the Electoral College. In fact, a lot of our legislators here in the state that I've actually talked to about this, because they voted on the NPV, the National Popular Vote, without digging too deep of a dive into it. They think that, okay, if the popular vote favors one candidate, all of our electoral votes go to that candidate, which is not the way it's supposed to work. So that tells me that a lot of legislators do not understand the Electoral College and why it was put there. So it was the founding fathers that put it there to keep us from being a pure democracy and a constitutional republic. So how do you feel about making sure we keep the Electoral College?
Well, Delaware was just recently, I went to Dover, and the state legislature was voted in favor of that. Right. We have a small state. We're Delaware. We have 3 electoral votes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the reason that's our founders wanted that is that Delaware is important. Okay. Other larger states have more electoral votes, obviously. Right. But look, in a presidential election, 3 electoral votes could make the difference. Delaware could make the difference in the presidential election if it was that close. So basically, by taking our, going with the popular vote, the little power that we do have with our 3 votes, that's taken away from us. And we're lumped in with the New Yorks and Californias of the country, and our voice, it disappears.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize, I think, is that if you have a pure democracy, and they think we have a pure democracy, which we don't because we're a republic, But a pure democracy actually leads to mob rule. So if you could have a small group of people believe one way and a large group believes another way, well, they can just wipe their thoughts out. So it's something that's another issue that we need to bring up and get going. The thing to me is I don't quite understand with what's going on, everything that's going on today, why so many millennials and younger folks are embracing this socialistic movement that we have, free everything. I think, and I'll get your thoughts, but I think it might be just that they don't realize that nothing's free. What do you think about that?
We have a great opportunity in this country, and people, the millennials, need to see it. People can do anything they really set their hearts on doing. If they want to put in the work and the time and really, there's no limit on what you can achieve in this country.
Right.
And for the government, basically, and they've done this, to limit people in terms of saying to them, well, we will give you this, this, and this, as long as you do what we say or vote for a certain party. To me, that goes against everything that this country was founded on. This is a land of opportunity. Is it harder for some people than others? Absolutely.
That's one of the problems I see, is that it's okay to be one party or the other, but it's not about party as much as it is about the process or the ideals. Like I've said before, that we've been coming down one road, and you might be a little on the left or you might be a little on the right. But what's happened here recently is we've actually split off into two roads. One's completely left, and the other one's more to the right. So it's funny because I use the analogy that, okay, if you're looking at socialism and that kind of thing, it's a divide. If you divide a number, it's math, right? You get a smaller number. But if you multiply, you get a higher number. It's a bigger number. And that's really kind of a stupid analogy, but it works. Anyway, one of the things I've noticed is that the person you're running against there is she's always voting for party. It doesn't matter what the issue is, and I think I mentioned this earlier, or what her constituents want, because the polls tell the story a lot of times, is that she's voting with the party constantly. So that's problematic to me. What are some of the issues that you think that she votes on that shouldn't, are wrong?
Well, we have a great example of what's happened here just in the last 2 years. Instead of proposing or legislation that will help Delaware, my opponent, she's been on the investigation bandwagon. First with the Mueller investigation, all for it, and voting for impeachment. Investigations, impeachment based on nothing. Other than partisan politics,
right.
Removing the president. Quite frankly, that's a waste of the taxpayers' time, and to accomplish nothing other than toe the party line and follow your orders from your leader is not representing Delaware at all. It's time to get things done in Congress.
I agree. I think it's time that we actually move back to what we talked about earlier, the constitutional republic, and follow the Constitution as written. But listen, all the best of luck to you, Lee. And
thank you, Chick.
I'll do everything I can to support you.
Your support means a lot to me.
Maybe we can do this again
I sure hope so.
road after you're the congressman, and get your thoughts on the issues of the day.
I'd just like to say a couple of things. That this election is probably the most important election in our country's history. There's a lot on the line here.
I agree.
November, like you mentioned, the fork in the road. We have to fight for our country as we know it right now. It could go in a totally different direction. that is unacceptable to you and is unacceptable to me, and I think unacceptable to most Americans. So it's very important that people get involved and come out to vote. And if I might add, I'd just like to ask everyone out there to go to gomurph.com. That's my website. And I'd appreciate your support on November 3rd. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
And everybody, please, if you agree with any of this, or even if you don't, put it out there and share it, because the more people who have the information can make better informed decisions. Again, thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Jay.
Good luck to you.
Okay.